Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our last event of Inside Out Unboxing Leadership. We hope you have been keeping well and that you have been enjoying the journey towards heartful leadership. Now that we have explored what makes us a heartful leader, it's time for us to move on and know more about the essential values that we need to equip ourselves in the times of today to implement the heartful leadership towards our society. Today we have our speaker, Mr. Vijay Kumar, joining us. Vijay is currently serving as the president of AIESEC in India, a chapter of the world's largest youth run organization. He is a mechanical engineer graduate and had the opportunity to work with BMW and Volvo before graduating. It is through the years spent in AIESEC that he realized his passion for making world a better place through value-driven leadership. He is currently 24 years old and has been a part of AIESEC for the last 5 years, taking up different roles. Apart from work, he's always interested in spending time on things that regenerate him, such as playing violin, reading books, to name a few. So, welcome, Vijay. It's a real pleasure to have you with us today. I cannot think of a more suitable person than yourself to complete our summit. You are indeed a personification of a young, heartful leader who is actively contributing towards bringing change in our society. Again, thank you so much for holding this interview with us. The bio said, you are everything that we are trying to achieve through this summit, from being a young leader who is also leading heartfully and who's actively bringing about change. Let us know more about how you came where you are today. So I would like to start this conversation with learning more about you, learning more about your journey towards this position.
Definitely, Soumya. Once again, thank you so much for having me here. It's just lovely to be here. I'm looking forward to the entire conversation as well. But yeah, I think a quick start to or an introduction to myself about how things started was I was just like probably any other kid in school, rather skinny one at that. My mom always had trouble uh, getting me to finish my lunchbox, and that's an entirely different story. But yeah, anyway, so I was just a regular kid. It was a smooth, warm childhood that I had. Probably there is nothing that I would want to change about it. We had a very loving, warm environment even at school because right from childhood, values were the things that we were always taught about, even in school. We weren't forced a lot to get amazing grades or to achieve extraordinary things while we were in school, but the only thing that they taught us in school was particularly how do you be a good person through the right values. And probably the regular things that you hear, which is honesty is the best policy. Don't be too greedy, don't steal, don't cheat, things like that. These were the regular things back in school. And now that I look back at things, they were very, very important part of my childhood as well. And I would really encourage everyone to just start doing that for the kids that they see around, probably for themselves as well, if because it's never a too old time to start thinking about the values that you need to lead or live a beautiful life. So that was certain things about school. So school was a breeze. It was lovely, and we always had these bunch of friends who would always hang around with us. And one of one fine day, I had this idea of getting a cycle for myself, and I would ask my parents about that. And the idea of having or getting to ride a bicycle from your home to the school was so different and beautiful for me, and that any school kid, because until then we just had a regular school transport, which would just take you from your home to the school and back from school to your place. So the idea of having a bike all by myself, all for myself, was just so thrilling and beautiful, and that was something that I really wanted. And then one fine day, I got a very nice cycle, and that was it. I was the happiest kid probably on the planet that day. I was on top of the world. I felt like that's the secret of life, getting exactly what you need. And I thought I'll never probably even want something else in life, right? Because all I've ever wanted was that amazing cycle, and I've had it. So that's how it started. Is I would take that cycle, go to the school, and I would have this private group of friends also would have another bicycle of their own, and we'd probably meet for a brief chat before reaching school or probably after school as well. And these little gatherings made me feel like I was a part of something more special because of something that I had, which is my cycle. And then it was fun, just like that, as a happy school going kid. I would just go to school, finish my things with that, come back. School was pretty easy and fun. It was very, very warm, like I had mentioned. Um, and one of the things that I would do well is because I would cycle properly, my shoes wouldn't get dirty. So regardless of the cycle or the terrain that was there, I would eventually end up at the school with good sparkling shoes as they were when I started off. Right. And that was something that my teachers at school also noticed quite a bit, and they would just appreciate me in front of the entire class for it, saying, you know what, Vijay has really nice polished shoes. He's very presentable. This is something that if you learn from him, blah, 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 and things like that. And that made me feel very special and good because first off, it always feels nice to get appreciation as a kid. Second off, I had to do nothing for it because all the things, I mean, the reason my shoes were so sparkling and shiny because of my parents. One of them would just either do it up a little early that day to make sure that I would have probably a good time roaming around in the school getting them dirty. But that was the thing, just I never had to shine them myself, and I always got credit for it. So that was fun. And then life went on that way. And then something very interesting happened, and this is something I really want to mention to all our delegates and audience as well. Is one day I got bored of my amazing cycle, something that I believe was the key to all my happiness for the rest of my life. I got bored with it. I just thought, okay, it's just another day, just a regular day that I get to ride my cycle to school and come back. And that's something that made me think and wonder why exactly I was feeling that. And in the meantime, while I was basking in the glory of having shiny shoes, I also realized that I had a lot of friends who probably didn't have shining shoes. I had a lot of friends who didn't have proper shoes in the first place that could be shined. Or I would have certain friends who didn't have parents to shine them. These were tiny realizations that I had, but now that I look back at it, it's these were tiny realizations that really made sense, and that actually also shaped me into the person that I am today. Apart from this, there were these instances that I mentioned. I got a little bored about my amazing cycle that I thought I would never get bored of, and that's when I had another realization, thinking one person's mundane routine is another person's most extravagant dream. And the cycle that's become a routine for me is the most extravagant dream for someone who's probably never had the opportunity to ride it even once while they were in school, and that would have been their most happiest instance. Now these were certain things or tiny questions or realizations that I've had because of the warm environment that was brought up in, the loving environment, the value-based environment that we were growing up in. And they also sort of helped me understand the importance of how it's good and very nice to bring up children in that sort of a environment, because if not anything, they really make us good people and better citizens at the end of the day. And that's how things started, and that was how schooling was. Schooling was fun, and right after that is not so much fun, because after schooling there were 2 years where the regular Indian young kid dream of getting into IIT because you want to get into it even though you don't fully know what it's about because people are talking about it. I was one of those unfortunate little kids as well who had this, who was sold this dream of, there's something called IIT. You write these couple of exams, you get this training. The one of the phrases that they would use is "life is settled." I mean, I never understood what that was when I was a kid, but they would say, "You go to IIT, that's a beautiful thing, and that's probably what is awaiting you." Unfortunately, I got into an institute that would give me coaching for the same. And for a kid who has been brought up in a very warm, good, optimistic environment, jumping to an institute like that was a very drastic change, because now suddenly the values were all different. The way that people would run the show was different. The way that the people treat each other was different. Their objective of everything that they would do was different. It's not for the betterment of humankind or something that's really going to bring you joy, but something about being a bit more efficient or getting things done. And it doesn't matter how you do it, but you need to do it and things like that, right? There were certain instances where people would put a bit of unnecessary pressure on young kids without knowing how exactly would the person turn up. And it's not just me, it's a lot of young individuals that go through that sort of a grind for particular competitive exams, right? And this was a complete drastic change of how I perceived life to be when I was in school, and suddenly I'm thrown into the big bad world, as I used to think that was. So suddenly, with a very different perspective of the world, I finished my 2 years after school. Um, and that's when, right after that, I got into SRM in Chennai. And I was lucky enough to get into mechanical engineering because that's something that I loved. Uh, Unlike IIT JEE, even though that was something that I took up as a challenge, mechanical engineering is something that I truly loved. And I was blessed enough to have people around me support and not uh, push me into other things, but just to pursue the thing that I really liked, which is mechanical engineering. Um, that's when I ended up in Chennai because there's SRM University in Chennai. And a fun fact in that was one of our distant relatives was a professor in one of the campuses. So my parents thought it was a safe bet because the kid's not gonna go too far away also because I had to travel back. I mean, travel to Chennai because originally I'm from Hyderabad. I was born and brought up here. So that was the first time I was leaving home. And now that I think about it, I was away from home since I was 17, which is a fun fact because that was the first time I had to go away from home because I had to study. I traveled to Chennai. And the reason I went to Chennai was one reason to go to Chennai was to get out of Chennai. And that was very simple. I just went there to get done with my engineering, just do it well, and then finish it and just probably fly to Germany, finish my master's there, do something other than probably be in a very competitive zone because that was something that I did not like a lot from my past experience right after school. So I went to Chennai, and first year was good. And unlike a lot of uh, engineering students in India, I mean, I really like mechanical engineering, which might be a small surprise because, in India, you don't figure what you want to do and you take it. You finish engineering, then you figure what you want to do, technically. So, unlike that, I really liked what I was studying. So, college, at least the first year, was a little bit of breeze because I knew what exactly I wanted to do. Uh, and I don't know for a good thing or a bad thing, I also got amazing grades and good scores. So that was just an added point, but in a very subtle manner that just started adding to the pressure that I had on myself to probably prove certain things or to get in a better place or make sure that same grade is maintained. Right. So even the first year was fun and I could interact a lot with people. Uh, Me as a person, I would not interact a lot with my own classmates. That was because, like I mentioned earlier, the only reason I went to Chennai was to get out of Chennai. So I was not interested in the language, the tradition, the entire idea of Tamil Nadu or Chennai or the place or the the feeling of being in Tamil Nadu or Chennai. And I was not completely buying into it because I just wanted to finish the things that I was there for and leave. I would have more professors as my friends rather than my own classmates because I would feel like that's a conversation is something that I would have. So technically, you get this image that someone who doesn't talk a lot probably gets a few good marks, and then you probably don't even know the name of the kid because probably he might not know your name. I mean, that's the image that you probably get, and that's the image
Oh
that people
yeah,
have.
we all have dealt with such people. We call them teachers' pets sometimes. I'm so
Oh
sorry.
yeah. Well, I wasn't one exactly because I was just there for, uh, let's say, knowledge doubts, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
talk to anyone unless it was really, really required as well. So that's how my first year was. Then I got into second year, and there were a couple of other things, and there's a bit more added pressure in terms of what exactly I wanted to do, because I think even the audience can understand. Some of them can really know that when you're in college, and then you have a bunch of friends or people who ask you, all right, what after engineering, or what is it that you want to do, or did you start planning, or what is it that you're working on, and things like that. In a very subtle subconscious manner, they start pushing you towards a place where you feel like it's important to have everything figured out. And I was a person who used to think that probably if I don't have everything figured out, that's not a great thing as well, right? Even though I was completely in love with what I was doing. So second year was fun in that manner because I was dealing with understanding what exactly is it that I wanted to choose, because I knew I was going to continue in mechanical engineering in the same field, but I didn't know what branch exactly or the category under that, because there's tons of things that you can do under mechanical engineering as well. And then obviously there's the regular um, confusion of a kid that's there in college. Then I went into third year, and that's the time I got the opportunity to work with amazing companies like BMW, Volvo, and the year before that, I had a chance to intern with BHEL as well. So that was fun because that year I had quite a bit of experience understanding how exactly does it look like in the outside world again working, and not just in a classroom, because here it's hands-on experience. So that is something I really liked, and that's when I realized that rather than just reading things in a book, it's a lot of fun to actually try and practice these things as well. And with that experience, I was done. And in third year, that's when certain things got even more hectic, because then people again would give you suggestions of what exactly you'd want to do. You'd consult people in terms of what is it that you want to do post engineering. And then third year was just me and my friends figuring out which coaching institute to go to for my GRE classes, right? And that's how third year was done. And then I came back to Hyderabad for my semester break. And I was sure a little chilling for the vacation in Hyderabad. And I get a phone call from a very old friend. And my friend calls me up and says, "You know what, Vijay, it's been quite a while. Why don't we catch up? Because it's been a few years since we spoke." And I said, "Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm free because everything's done. I'm here for a vacation, a small break." I went in to meet my friend. And this friend and I, we grew up together. We were childhood friends. We used to play football probably every other single day. And that was fun. Like I mentioned, school time was always fun. So I met him, and I didn't interact with him a lot in the recent years. So I would just follow him probably on Instagram or check out his WhatsApp stories every now and then. And I knew that he was doing something, but not entirely sure what exactly he was doing. Right. So I met him for a quick chat, and that's when he tells me, "You know what, Vijay, I'm in AIESEC right now, and I'm a vice president for incoming global talent." Uh, that's the first time I heard about AIESEC as an organization. And then it didn't really make a lot of sense to me in terms of what exactly incoming global talent was back then. But the thing that I heard was that he was a vice president. And suddenly I was like, "Hey, that sounds cool. Why is it that probably I don't have a title, even though I'm doing fairly well at college?" I mean, just a regular kid. Then we just spoke on for a little while. Then one started telling me certain things about AIESEC. And as usual, if it's the first time you try pronouncing the name of the organization, you get it wrong. And I got it wrong as well. And then Warren corrected me, saying that it's AIESEC, not ASEC. Then we started talking about AIESEC a bit more. He said, "This is a place where you really get a perspective about a lot of things. You're exposed to a lot of stakeholders that really push you to be a better version of yourself." I was like, "That sounds too fancy and nice. And it's probably something that I would want to do." And I asked him a question. I said, "Is this something that probably I could do in my, let's say, pre-final year or final year? Because it sounds more of something that you'd want to do at the beginning of your college years and not the ending." He said, "You know what, just give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And probably you never know, because it's a very beautiful opportunity." And I thought this is exactly probably what I needed also, because anyway, I had exposure to the mechanical aspect of understanding how work is done, because I already interned and worked with certain companies. I thought, let's try the leadership aspect of certain things. And then that's what the conversation ended on. I came back home, told my mom about this, and I did not, I just made a brief mental note, and I completely forgot all about it until I went back to Chennai again. Fortunately, I got into one GRE institute that promised me that I'm going to get amazing grades, marks, you know, the regular things. And then we went there, and then the entire class was done. And then it was after the class was done that I realized the person sitting in front of me had an AIESEC t-shirt on, and it had the AIESEC logo. Yeah, it's a little funny how life plays tricks on us. So that's when I see the AIESEC logo, and I was like, "Hey, you know, this isn't this exactly what my friend told me, what Warren told me about?" Then I go talk to that person and say, "Are you from AIESEC?" And the person says, "Yes, I'm from AIESEC." And I say, "You know what, I'm looking forward to joining the organization because one of my friends is a vice president." I mean, I could throw around that word a little. And then he's like, "Yeah, yeah, definitely sure. It's the right time because we're recruiting right now as well." Then he sends across the link. I fill it up, and I'm eagerly waiting for a response, and I get a response. And I go for an interview, and then here we are as the member company president of AIESEC India. But yeah, that's a brief journey about. I mean, that's not brief, but yeah, that's a quick insight about how my journey has been before and till the journey of AIESEC. But yeah.
Well, that's one hell of a ride. And I'm sure our audience will definitely connect to you regarding the rituals of IIT and JEE exams to GRE and to the going abroad plans.
Mhm.
Whereas there are certain things that I noticed through the journey where I would want your opinion or your insight about it. So, like you said, the school was sort of a breeze. It was a very warm environment. But then you went to the coaching institute where a lot of things just like, flipped upside down. The
Mhm.
environment drastically changed. So, how did you deal with such a transition? What was your thought process behind it? And what would you recommend others who are watching us today as well? Because I'm pretty sure all of us have gone through this transition or maybe will encounter it at some point of our lives.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for that, Soumya. Uh, to be honest, the first time I went through it, I did not really know that I was going through something. It just felt like a regular thing in and out. I just wasn't feeling very great about it. It's just later on when I was in situations similar to this, where I understood that exactly my expectations were not the reality. I started understanding, okay, this is probably a recurring thing and that'll keep happening. And then we really inevitably understand the truth that probably this is not the first time and it definitely won't be the last time. So if probably this is the first time that you're going through it and you haven't identified it yet, just like I did probably in school or in college, then it's completely fine. It's important that you go through the experience in one piece. And it's okay if you probably don't find a solution. And it's only in a natural way and through repetition that you identify certain things for yourself. For example, the first time that I went through such an instance where it was a complete culture shift or a drastic change in the environment, uh, I didn't know if I was in the right place in itself. The only thing that kept me going was, what was I here for? And that's a question that I could answer for myself, saying, okay, I'm here to learn certain things because I really like them, not because somebody tells me I have to get something. And when I say somebody, it's basically the professors that that will always keep poking you. And then there are always a bunch of friends here and there. Even if you're not completely sure about what it is that you'd want sometimes, because it's okay and it's fine, we just need to identify what is it that really makes us happy at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, and at the end of the month. Now, I just like to elaborate a little bit on that line over there, is because over the past few years, particularly in the instances where you pointed out and saying, what would I do? This is something that I've understood, right? Which is, what makes me happy at the end of the day is not what necessarily makes me happy at the end of the week, and definitely not something that makes me happy at the end of the month. Now, why do I say that? Is through experiences. Probably what makes me happy at the end of the day is a good conversation with my parents, or some fun time with my sibling, or a good new TV show that probably I could binge watch, or a good novel that I could read. That's something that could make me a little happy at the end of the day, is knowing that the day went well. But what would really make me happy at the end of the week is real progress with the things that I really want to learn. That could be a course that I took up and the progress that I've had on the course. It could be the performance that my immediate team is bringing to me. It could be certain achievements that I've planned out for myself in terms of my goals that I want to achieve. And these are things that make me happy at the end of the week. And if you elaborate that and extend that up further, what really makes me happy at the end of the month is not the TV shows that I probably binge watched, but the real progress of the learnings that I've had in that month. And you can extend that over here a decade. I mean, it's probably just 2 decades that we are here for right now. But this is the thing, right? Is that you just need to identify the things that keep you going. And that's something I would really recommend as well. Even if there's a drastic shift in the environment, if your expectations don't match, it's important that you identify what exactly you're there for. But that's something that helped me out.
No, that's amazing. And another thing, without wasting any time, I would like to ask about the pressure that you were talking about, the pressure that comes from the society, as well as the self-made pressure. Like you said, more than anyone else, you are expecting more from yourself and to maintain the grades, etc. So how do we keep that in check? Is what my question is for you.
That's a very nice question, Soumya. In fact, similar to my previous answer, I never knew how to keep that in check when I was actually going through it. It's only post the experience that you can connect the dots looking back. But now that I think about it, to keep the pressure in check, it was a very similar thing, right? Which is, the first semester was something that I really liked, and I went ahead and I got good grades. And the second semester was something that more of a pressure in terms of maintaining those grades. The second year was even more in terms of maintaining the first year. And it is completely okay if the pressure is building up. But the key for me that really worked out back then was to focus on the novels that I read, because I was someone who, I mean, I don't want to get into very dicey situations here, but I didn't have to read a lot as well to get good grades, because I would just pay attention in the classroom. That is something I would really recommend people as well. I just saw your eyebrows raised when I said pay attention in the classroom, because it could be a little tough these days, especially when it's virtual. But that's something that I realized, that that's an important thing, because if I do not listen to whoever was probably teaching me certain things in the classroom, I have to spend twice the amount trying to understand that all by myself. And it was that simple understanding that sort of pushed me to just pay a bit more attention, not 100%, but just a bit more in the classrooms, just listen and respect the person who's trying to teach or give me some knowledge. And that really helped me out in certain instances, because I didn't have to prepare an entire week for one paper. I just probably had to study for a few hours because I would remember what was said in the classroom. And the rest of the time, like a typical engineering student, if you don't get to do anything, you succumb to pressure, right? So the rest of the time, I would just do something else in terms of reading a novel or playing my violin because that's something I really love doing, really relaxes me as well. That's something I should do, or spend some quality time with a bunch of my roommates, even though I didn't have a lot of friends in college per se. But yeah, I just spend my time in that manner. So particularly in terms of pressure, you just need to identify certain points that really help you cope with certain things. It could be music for a few individuals. It could be a conversation with a very good friend where you just talk about everything that you probably can't mention to anybody else. It could be reading novels for someone like me because that's something I would enjoy. And I would know for a fact that even if I'm not studying or there's quite a bit of pressure, I would sort of evaluate my awesomeness at that moment of time by the novels that I would finish. And that in a very subtle manner would just give you encouragement in its own manner, right? And different people have different ways of coping with stress. But one of the ways to not do it is probably do something that's a little toxic for you, right? And you have to be a little careful about things like that, which is probably you don't get into bad habits or things that you cannot get out of later just because you want a brief relief from the things that you're going through right now. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does very well indeed. Thank you for highlighting that small, little important lesson that, try to divert yourself into something that you can afford to continue later. Moving forward, one last question from your journey part was how you said about exploring your options through the years to know and figuring it out where you want to go. So what is the approach that you found the most useful when you were trying to actualize your vision into the options that you had in front of us at that current point of time?
Right. I mean, I have to really give it to you, Soumya. You're really asking the nice, good questions that probably a lot of young individuals need to ask themselves and probably find the answer to. So thank you for that. Now, just coming back to the question briefly, is what you mentioned. How do you exactly just understanding that is you asked how do you map certain things out about your vision and how do you deal with it if that does not happen, right? Um, Now, here's the thing: is if anyone tells you, and it's not just you, Soumya, it's the audience. If anyone tells you that they have figured it out or they figured everything that they want to do in life when they were in school or in the first grade or when they were born, good chances are they're just probably sugarcoating things for you because that is not how things work, right? You will always see kids who say, I want to become an astronaut, and they end up becoming something else entirely because that's what they like later on. You will see people who say, I have no clue what I want to become. And then these people become stars later on. And you can never even imagine that, oh, was this the kid from my school who was so clueless and lost? And now look at that person. And it happens with all of us because we're in the same boat in that field at least. So what happens is one of the ways that really worked out well for me is I always wanted to be a scientist when I was a kid. And then, the regular question that people ask you when they say, what is it? What's your aim? What's your goal? What do you want to become when you become a big person? Then obviously us being kids, we pick one of the things in our sample or database. And as kids, our database is not huge. So it's either going to be engineer, doctor, wartime journalist for very, very few people, and then scientist and blah, the regular list, especially if born and brought up in India. So I somehow, I'm not sure if this was genuine or so it was a borrowed idea, but I really wanted to be a scientist because I was too young when I had the idea, so I can't remember it. I wanted to be a scientist. So in school, I was someone who was interested in science. So that was something that I felt really nice about learning. Then later I figured, what the entire shebang about IIT JEE, the jazz about being in an IIT and things like that was something that I was interested in. And it was only after that that I felt like I need to think a bit more in terms of the direction that I want to go ahead in, right? Because the major decision that I had to take in my life, the first one was when I was in 10th grade, whether to choose BIPC or MPC. I mean, and some of us have been through that dilemma as well. Either we're going to take the maths batch or we're going to take the biology batch because that's really defines you, whether you're going to become an engineer or a doctor or someone else completely, right? So I chose MPC because I really loved math. And that was like one huge decision. I was like, that's it. No more decisions to take. It's a straight path from here on. And then once that was done, people said, in engineering, there are multiple things, but then somehow I really like mechanical engineering. So I just took that, right? And then my initial plan once I took mechanical engineering was very simple: go to Chennai, finish my mechanical engineering in good colors, not flying colors, but in a decent manner. Luckily, that turned out to be more than I expected. And then post that, go to Germany, finish up my master's in something, and then be done with it. I mean, I had that much planned. Uh, Funny thing is, after I had all of that planned and I went to Chennai, not a lot of things went according to plan, at least in terms of how I wanted to leave Chennai and go to Germany, right? Because I had AIESEC in my final year. And then that's when I started understanding, you know what? I think what I like and my interests are changing because of the new experiences that I'm having. And then if you're someone who's at that point in life right now, then that's completely fine. Because any vision or any direction that we choose right now is completely based on our past experiences and the data that we have right now with us for us to make a brief roadmap for ourselves, right? And these things keep changing. Probably for some of us, it keep changing on a yearly basis. For some of us, that changes on a monthly basis. Uh, it's probably not a great thing if it changes on a daily basis, because then you're a little clueless of where exactly you want to go. So you just need to finalize a bit on what exactly is it that probably really gets you up in the morning thinking this is something that I want to do, right? For me, when I was in my first year, second year, something that really got me or helped me get out of bed and say, this is what I really want to do, was applying to higher studies and just going and finishing them up. And that changed when I was in my fourth year because of the new experience that I had in AIESEC, which is this really seems to be interesting. And this is something like where there's so much to learn. So I started thinking in terms of what can I do in AIESEC itself, right? And a person like me who probably get good grades and really wants to go out of Chennai to Germany, a person like me ended up taking a gap year after my college just so that I could spend an entire year with AIESEC as the local committee president back then. Now, that decision was not done in one day or 2 days or a week or a month, right? It took a while for me to understand that. And for now, right now, if you're someone who's a little lost, all you need to do is what is it that you really like doing? And that's a start, right? Based on just thinking, would you be happy if you're probably let's say, designer in the next 2 to 3 years? And that's completely fine. You can just put that for yourself, saying, this is something that I want to pursue at the moment. And based on the future experiences that you're going to have, you can always tilt or change that a little bit. And once you choose something else, that does not mean a clear no to what you planned for yourself earlier. Because even now, with all my experiences in AIESEC, I'm still inclined to pursuing something in mechanical engineering. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to completely shy away from the idea of the things that I've had earlier. So you just need to keep or think in terms of options for yourself so that you're not emotionally connected to just one destination. And you're either like, okay, if this goes well, this is probably something I'd like doing. If this goes well, this is probably something I'd end up doing and I'm fine with it. And just thinking in terms of options or iterations really makes you very effective and efficient, even in personal life, and probably how you plan things for yourself. But yeah, I hope that was something you're looking for as well.
Definitely. These are exactly the values that we are looking for to help us grow and, to help us move forward in this journey. Hopefully, like you did. So we've heard a lot about Isaac and your experience, that how you got there. So I would request you to please shed some more lights on this, and as well as thank you for letting us know the right pronunciation for it. So yes, the stage is yours.
Definitely, Soumya. So just a brief introduction to what exactly AIESEC is, because this is a question that we keep getting a lot. AIESEC is the world's largest youth-run organization. We're present in more than 110 countries. And in India, we're present in more than 30 cities, right? We develop leadership, and that's leadership is at the core of everything that we do. And we believe that leadership is the fundamental solution uh, to every challenge that's there right now. And we really understand or really try to help the youth of the country and the world to develop better leadership skills within themselves to solve certain things. Now, how exactly do we develop leadership skills in people is through certain things that we do as the organization, right? Which is we have cross-cultural exchanges where we have exchange related to the corporate sector, and we have exchange related to the social sector. And also we develop leadership through the members who join AIESEC. So we recruit when probably the young individual is still in college, right? And as soon as the person gets into the organization, they become a member. And that's the first time they get a glimpse of what exactly AIESEC is, what is it that we do, what exactly are cross-cultural exchanges, how does that really help? Because AIESEC was formed right after World War II, and it's a pretty old organization as well, right? So as a member, that's you get a glimpse about what exactly the organization is, and after 6 months, you get an opportunity to be a team leader. If we know that we can trust you with a team of your own. uh, I can't help but even share my joy with you when I say, imagine a young student having a team of their own, of 3 people, 4 people. It's like your own little amazing team that you can really shape their lives in certain extent to within the organization as well. And that's a beautiful and very empowering experience that any individual would have if you stay longer in the organization, right? And after you're a team leader in the organization, you have an opportunity to become a vice president. And from the role of being a vice president, things get a little jazzier and too fancy as well because of the titles. And a vice president role is for 1 year, and then you get elected and be a president on a local chapter. And then if you wish to continue further, you get onto the national team. And currently, I'm the national committee president for AIESEC India. We have our headquarters based out of Canada, and we have our national headquarters based out of Navi Mumbai, and we have multiple local chapters as well. Probably you just need to Google it to find the one closest to you, and see if you're recruiting. So this is a very brief glimpse about AIESEC, and there's certain other things that you can find on about Google as well if you're very interested. There's quite a bit of content on YouTube. But yeah, it's one of the basic things. As soon as I was recruited, I knew about AIESEC was, I heard that it was a very nice organization from my old friend Varun, who mentioned it. But one of the things that really got my attention is AIESEC is a value-driven leadership organization, right? Because we drive values in individuals and they tend to become better leaders. So I wasn't very sure about what exactly these values were initially. So as a new recruit, there's a seminar that we're given at AIESEC, right? So I was very blank, and I had my local committee president talk to all of us and say, you know what, we have 6 values in AIESEC. And I was just thinking, 6, is that too little or too less, or is that just the right number? Because 6 is, I was just thinking, like, can we become better leaders with just 6 values? And then the person who explained things to me started talking and said, you know what, the 6 values are activating leadership, enjoying participation, demonstrating integrity, striving for excellence, living diversity, and acting sustainably. Now, as soon as I heard these 6 values, I was like, that pretty much covers certain things about being a good leader. But how can we actually start living these things is a question that I had. And then a good amount of my journey has always been about that as well. So, but yeah, that's a brief introduction about what AIESEC is.
Wow. So I'm sorry, but out of habit, I cannot help but ask you that would you, take us on a journey through these 6 values? So let's start with the one that I really found super interesting is activating leadership and enjoying participation. That speaks volume to me, but it would rather give me more clarity if you could explain us more about it.
Definitely. And I can understand why that was very catchy to you, because it was catchy to me as well. I mean, given the context that I've said earlier, saying that I was a kid who would not talk a lot to any other student in my own classroom, I was just thinking, is the entire concept or idea of leadership for me? Because I mean, I wouldn't even tend to talk to people unless there's a requirement for it. And then here I'm in a group of people where they say, you know what, there's something called a value, which is activating leadership. So here's the thing, right? Like through my experience in AIESEC, I've really understood what exactly activating leadership is we lead by example and inspire leadership through actions and results. We take responsibility for developing the leadership potential of others. And this is something that we just don't live in AIESEC. It's a regular thing that we do on a regular basis. It's a simple fact that good leaders create good leaders, if not better leaders, right? Because one of the most basic things about leadership is you can read about it, you can try listening about it, but one of the best ways to become a good leader is by understanding how it's done, by looking at good leaders, and then you try practicing it by yourself. So one of the major things about the value of activating leadership is you be someone who activates leadership within people. And that particularly means that you do not give people all the solutions, because you cannot make them solution oriented by just giving them solutions. You make them solution oriented by giving them questions and guiding thoughts, and they become individuals who actually turn into the ones who find the answers, and they become leaders themselves. And this is one of the values that we really hold very close to our hearts as well, because AIESEC is all about leadership. And every, let's say, the word we put out, the posts that we put out, or the experiences that we share, it's designed towards activating leadership in young individuals. Because as you and me, we're just 2 people who are trying to change the world. But imagine if we could actually engage and develop the entire youth of the world, or just the nation as well. It's not just two people leading them, it's just so many leaders who are capable of doing wonderful things in their own fields. And that's something that we really believe in. And that's the true meaning of activating leadership as well. Now, another very intriguing factor about enjoying participation, and again, similarly, something that I found very interesting myself is um, I was thinking as a regular kid in college. Now, I do enjoy participation and I don't enjoy participation as well. Now, you might ask, Vijay, how is that possible? Exactly. Right. I enjoyed participation when there was a question from my professor's end saying, okay, what does this formula mean? Then I would just jump and say, okay, probably this is what that means. And I did enjoy participation there. But if it was a place where I would have to collaborate with my peers, or if it's a place where I had to just enjoy discussion or make sure we're collaborating, working together, I would be like, I'm going to pass. So, I mean, I'm sure there are so many other friends of mine who are exactly opposite like this, because they enjoy participation when it's with their friends, and probably not a lot when someone calls on them for an answer. But here's the thing, and that was my experience just as a college student, right? And then I joined AIESEC, and they said, you know what, one of the most basic values as a good leader that you need to imbibe on a regular basis is enjoying participation. Then when I dug deeper into that and I started living that value through the years I've been in AIESEC, I understood that it's essential to enjoy participation regardless of where you are, right? And what we truly mean by saying enjoying participation is we create a dynamic and welcoming environment through the activity and enthusiastic participation of individuals. We enjoy being involved in our organization. And that is something that we really, really like doing as well. And it sets a very basic definition to the ones who join the organization, saying that we really enjoy being involved in our organization. And for that, we don't mind going the extra mile of actually having that extra conversation or collaborating or discussing. And this is something that would eventually make you feel a bit more comfortable with yourself as well. And it's a very essential skill to have when you're a leader. So one of the things, like you mentioned, is something that we love and we live by is enjoying participation, regardless of whatever the participation is, right? Because that's the future of work, being someone who can create a warm environment, regardless you know the person or you don't know. Being able to host a conversation, regardless you know the person or don't know. And someone who can contribute valuable things is something that you gain through practice. And that is something that you gain through living the value of enjoying participation. But yeah, those are the two values that you're most curious about.
Thank you. It indeed is a very beautiful picture to imagine, an entire youth community coming together, driving change and catalyzing. That's indeed one beautiful vision. So when I look into the other values, I also see, in the same field about demonstrating integrity and striving for excellence. So let's dive deeper into those.
Definitely. Now, once you're done with the first view or the look at AIESEC, you start understanding, okay, this is something that you really, really like. And it would be lovely if you can start imbibing these things. And that's when we get into a bit more deeper aspects of certain values, right? Which is exactly like you've mentioned, demonstrating integrity and striving for excellence. Now, what exactly do we mean by demonstrating integrity is we are consistent and transparent in our decisions and actions. We fulfill our commitments and conduct ourselves in a way aligned with what we envision. Now, this could seem like an elaborate definition, but it's important that everybody understands and is consistent with the value, which is why we word it in that manner. But in a very basic manner, demonstrating integrity is understanding the essence of leadership. And in a very simple manner, it is simply not doing something that I would never recommend others to do or that I wouldn't be okay with. Because as young individuals in AIESEC, as you rise through the ranks, you have access to amazing resources. And that's, I mean, resources that probably no other young individual would have access to. And it's important as an individual and as a leader that you demonstrate integrity and you never misuse the resources that you have, right? And AIESEC gives you a glimpse of how you can practice that. Even as regular students, would you be someone who would probably inform your professor saying only if your friends or someone who's not your friend cheats? Or would you do the same even if your closest of friend cheats? And that is something in terms of you understanding how would you demonstrate integrity, because that needs to be consistent. This could be in terms of, would you only report if you found, like, let's say $1,000, or would you report if it's just like $10? I know the line gets a little blurry over there, but the idea is you have a clear idea of what you believe in as demonstrating integrity and what exactly is required for you to develop the organization or yourself in a sustainable manner. That is something that we get to experience on a regular basis, and that's something that we love as well, as I mentioned earlier. Now, while you're being a very good person and you're developing certain things and you're activating leadership, enjoying participation, you're demonstrating integrity, one of the things coming to the next value is it's very, very important not just to say good things, but to do good things. Because at the end of the day, it's the actions that matter as much as the intentions. So we have a value which is called striving for excellence. Right now, this is completely about how the ambition to excel and establish the habits for the same are important as a leader. Because here I could sit here all day saying that I love my team, I love the members on it, I can collaborate all day long. But if I cannot show results, my team's not going to stay there for long, because what's really going to drive them, apart from me being a good leader, is the results that they achieve from themselves. And for that, ambition is a very important thing, and it's a very good thing. And as individuals, we always strive for excellence, be it for ourselves, our families, our communities, or our country, or probably even the humankind. So this is something that we understand as a very essential part of being a good leader, because you can only be a very, very effective and a good leader if you strive for excellence and you make sure the ones who really follow you and your organization also strives for excellence. Otherwise, that would eventually result in stagnation, confusion, not understanding a lot of things, and eventually you would not be able to create the impact that you would really want to create. But yeah, these are the next two values that we dive into a little deeper as well.
Well, these values definitely help us to, clarify the image, especially regarding the integrity part that you said, because it can produce a lot of dilemma into us. And the point of striving excellence is so much rather um, misconstrued sometimes, because it's for collective growth, and that's where you see the actual change happening, and that's what even helps to empower the entire movement, as we've seen so many times repeat in the history. So
Mhm.
they definitely are two very strong and needed pillars. So thank you for clarifying that for us. And moving forward, I see the remaining two values which cannot be more relatable in today's time,
Mhm.
living diversity and acting sustainably. So please, stage is yours, enlighten us about them.
Oh, definitely. As I'm glad that I've been enlightened myself about these values through the organization, and I would love to share them as well with you. So, in terms of living diversity, that's a value that we really embrace as a global organization, because one of the things that really would get me excited about staying in AIESEC was the possibility of talking to internationals, students my age from a very different country, from a very different culture, with their own ideologies, their ambitions, and getting a chance to speak with them, understand what their culture is, was a blessing, right? And my first interactions about this, I'm not just explaining what the value is, but I'm just explaining how my experience with the value is. I'm trying to live that. Is as AIESEC, like I've mentioned, we send students abroad for certain things in terms of work for in the corporate sector or the social sector. Similarly, we get students from different countries to India as well for them to work in the corporate or the social sector. So I had an opportunity to pick up an intern from the airport, because here he was just approved, and he came down to India, particularly in Chennai, to work with TCS. And I went down to the airport, and that's a service that we provide because they're in a new country, in a new place, and they have no clue probably where they're going. And we, as ISECers in that place, we go to assist them. So I went and I spoke to the person. His name was Kristen, and he's from Colombia. Now, that was one of my first interactions with an international in Chennai. We spoke for a while. We got a cab. I had to take him to the place where he has to stay. And then through the entire cab ride, we were just talking about the currency, the conditions in Colombia, the living conditions, how the streets look like, how does his family look like, why is it he doing what he's doing right now, which is the choice that he made to come down to India, what are his future ambitions, his endeavors, and things like that. And I just realized it's so much different or more than probably just reading it from a book or watching a TV show, understanding their culture. Because probably, I mean, some of us would have watched Narcos or would have understood, okay, you know what, Latin America, this is exactly the condition, the language is like this. And I mean, just being a young individual, I just put that question also across. And then I really got to understand a very, very different perspective about how life is in Colombia. We exchanged currency, and I still have those coins that he had given me as a very nice memory, because these are things that you really treasure, right? And this is something that happened naturally. And that's something that I'd love to point out, Soumya, is I didn't have to try doing it because I was excited about meeting an individual from a different country. Now I'm going to go one step further and elaborate a bit more about living diversity. And this is something that's really going to get some of us thinking as well, is what exactly is the feeling that you'd get as soon as I mention our neighbor, which is Pakistan, right? It's not just a question for you, it's a question for all of us. Now, for some of us, as soon as we say that, the first image that we get is probably cricket, right? For some of us, it's a little bit of uneasy feeling. But for me, because I know people from Pakistan who've been in AIESEC and who also converse with us, we just realized that they are really our neighbors, probably like Kristen, but a little closer to us, right? And this is not just understanding that there are different places in the world with just human beings like you and me, but it's also living the value of living diversity, that it does not matter where the person is from, that as soon as you can find certain commonalities between you and the person, that you find a way to work towards betterment of the future. And me bring up the entire idea about the countries and things like that is not to talk about the governments of different countries, but it's just us as individuals and the youth of the countries. Because this is literally the future of work, where there will not be any dearth of ideas. And if you look at any huge MNCs, international companies, they're always looking forward to having diverse teams. And why is that? Is because diverse people, or people from different countries with diverse backgrounds, bring extremely different and diverse set of ideas, and together they bring out the best in all of us, right? And this is a value that we truly admire and we embrace as well, which is living diversity. And that's something that naturally comes to us just through the excitement and the fanciness that revolves around meeting and international. Moving ahead, which is one of our last values as well, which is acting sustainably, which talks about we act in a sustainable way for our organization and society. Our decisions take into account the needs of future generations. Now, this is a very organization centric value when I read it out, or when I say this is exactly what we follow. But this is something that I've been and my fellow ISECers have been following on a personal level as well, right? In a very simple instance, we generally have conferences in ISEC, right? Which is basically you travel to a place, you attend a conference for 2 to 3 days where they really tell you amazing things about how do you manage time, how do you manage stakeholders, and a lot of other informational things. And you get to socialize and network with a lot of people across India. Uh, Now, for conferences like these, it's important that you need a little bit of funds to travel. And as a college student, there's only limited funds that you get from parents because there's only so much pocket money that you can have. Now, as young ISECers, the young individuals, we have this choice. Do we use that 200, $300 to probably have that amazing burger that we can get our hands on for that day? Or we just save that, put it aside, and have that regular mess food, and then use that money for some travel that we can do? And then eventually, probably sometimes you would give in, you go for that amazing burger or that drink, and then you'd come back. However, over time that you realize you're missing out on something else even more beautiful. And that's when you make a conscious choice of saving time or saving money or saving electricity that really is going to help you later, right? And eventually you use that, the limited amount of resources that you have, for something else for yourself. Now, in a very natural manner, this helps you think about yourself for or in the future, and the resources that you would need to help yourself sustain in the future as well. Now, over time, if you're able to do it well for yourself, and with a little bit of practicing heartfulness, you'll be able to extend that sort of ideology to the entire society, where you understand things are important in a sustainable manner, not for yourself, but the next generation of, for the entire mankind as well, or humankind as well. And that's when you make certain choices. Like, it wouldn't cost you a lot to probably switch off a fan when you're walking out of that room. Similarly, it does not cost you a lot to save your time for something later that's really going to help you and others. And that's the entire idea of volunteering comes in as well, in terms of understanding, okay, is there a little bit of time that you can conserve here, and then use that for the betterment of humankind as well. But yeah, I mean, acting sustainably is something that's imbibed in us on a regular basis as well, because without that, you'd be a little all over the place. And it's one of the things that really teaches how to manage time in an effective manner. In fact, that's one of the things that really helped me achieve quite a few things. And it's honestly, this is what we speak as well in AIESEC, is that what you're going through right now must never be the highlight of your life. And there's always another important thing that's going to come up. And that needs to be a lot more better than probably the best highlight of your life. And that's only possible if you are living sustainably. And yeah, these are certain things that we follow on a regular basis as well, and which is why we truly believe that value-based leadership is something that the world needs right now.
That is such a hopeful message of, always looking forward for the next best thing in our lives. And yet, there's a little segment of it that we often usually ignore because we're too much in the moment that we don't usually switch off the fan or definitely dive into that burger. So that's a very gentle and much needed reminder to all of us joining us today that look forward, look for the next best thing, and live sustainably while you're at it. So once again, thank you so much for taking us through the journey of these incredible leadership. I could not agree more that this value-based leadership is what we need to imbibe in all of us to actually make that collective change happen. That's sort of the same vision that we are having in Inside Out as well, and it's been such a great pleasure to have you around. So, do you have any concluding thoughts for our audience? And also, do you want, like, can you share a little bit of a full circle moment journey for yourself? Like, how did you imbibe all these qualities in yourself, and then how did you emerge as such an efficient leader that you are today?
Definitely. Uh, so, yeah. Am I getting stuck? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I don't know, my screen was playing trick. Okay. Thank you so much for the question, Samya. But yeah, I mean, there have been multiple full circle moments in life as well, but some of them uh, pretty more evident than the rest and more enlightening than the rest. So here's something that I'd love to share in terms of understanding or how being a heartful leader is very important, right? I was someone who probably would read a lot, understand the entire world through the pages of a book, and I loved doing that instead of putting myself out there in the real world. And I was fine with it as well. And that's when I met AIESEC. I got into the organization, and I realized that what I was trying to do was read about swimming and jump into the ocean to swim. Really doesn't fully work that way, right? So I understood that leadership is something like that as well. I can always read a bunch of books about leadership in terms of understanding what really contributes to be a good leader, what really are the essential things for a leader and things like that. But I would never understand what it feels like to be a leader unless I put myself in those situations really and try the things that I've been trying to learn. So I would really recommend everybody to just do the little things. It could be just turning off the fan when you're alone, or turning off the fan when you're with a bunch of friends and telling them that this is something that you have to do to be sustainable. It could be a bunch of things that you could share with your friends or people who really look up to you in terms of understanding how can you activate leadership in them to make sure that they become sustainable themselves, they become solution oriented themselves, they become a bit more self-aware of what exactly their strengths are, their weaknesses are, and what is it that the contribution that they want to give. You can always push people to be a bit more participative and to enjoy that as well by doing that yourself, because we always believe a good leader always demonstrates and then demands whatever he or she or they have demonstrated. And that's a beautiful formula for you to really do good things for yourself, for your team, and together, right? And there are certain things that I would really recommend everybody to do as well. Be good. And just like a full circle, I mean, a mild full circle or semicircle is basically after my college, I went back to my school. Very, very fun fact is after a few years, after I was done with my college, I went back to my school and I met my principal after a very long time. And then she was just saying that, the regular chat, whenever a principal meets a alumni of the school, they say, oh, we're going to do wonderful things, blah, blah, blah. It's so nice and help us catch up and things like that. We spoke for quite a while. And there was one thing that she told me that really, really caught my attention. She said, you will do good things, but keep the goodness in your heart. And that's something that really, really took me back to my school days again, in terms of the warm environment that was built around me. And I would really appreciate all our listeners and the ones who are paying attention right now to do things that really make you feel warm and the ones next to you feel warm as well. Because at the end of the day, as good leaders, we are here to bring out the optimism and just make sure that we're making the world a better place one step at a time. So I would really encourage everyone to do that, and just don't read things or just don't feel like you've been an amazing leader just by hearing me say things or my experience. It's important that you try them out in your life as well. It's important that you put yourself in little uncomfortable positions, because the minute you start coming out of your comfort zone is that you really realize that that's exactly where the growth for you lies as well. So never shy away from these opportunities. Make sure that you're out there and you're doing certain things, and make sure you're following the values that we've spoken of till now as well. And I'm glad, so glad that this is one of the sessions, in fact, one of the last sessions that we're going to conclude this season with. And I'm so thankful that Soumya and for Heartfulness Global Youth Team to call me as well here. But yeah, this is something of a circle right there.
Thank you. Thank you so much again, Vijay, for answering all our questions. We will carry these pearls of wisdom in our hearts for a long time. So, guys, this brings us to the end of this interview as well as our leadership summit. Thank you again for taking the time. And to those of you who have joined our leadership summit, thank you for showing your continuous support and registering for our events. We will meet again very soon. Thank you, Vijay, once again, to sharing such a great deal of wisdom that would definitely be of much use to all the aspiring leaders joining us today. We couldn't be more grateful. At Inside Out, we always try to remain in touch with our community and post constant motivational posts and support for aspiring leaders. You can go ahead and join our family through Inside Out Facebook page, as well as you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter and for new and exciting content every now and then. Till then, stay tuned and go ahead and make that change happen. Thank you for joining us.